Marijuana is one of the more commonly known drugs, and you're probably more familiar with one of its street names because it has a long list, some being weed, pot, Mary Jane, etc., etc. Schizophrenia is also a commonly known disease that still raises questions because there is no single cause of the condition. You may be asking, what does a rare but serious mental illness like schizophrenia have in common with a drug like weed? And it's psychosis. A simple definition of psychosis can be described as a mental disorder characterized by a disconnection from reality. Experiments and studies are still being held to discover if weed truly has a direct correlation, causation, or just a trigger with schizophrenia. But it is known that psychiatric disorders involve a disturbance in the dopamine neurotransmitter system, which happens to be the same system that cannabis interacts with. There's no direct or singular cause of schizophrenia, and currently the only known cause of schizophrenia happens to be genetics. A longitudinal study over a large population was held to see if long term cannabis use correlated with a higher risk of developing schizophrenia. The study found that those who tried cannabis by age 18 were 2.4 times more likely to be diagnosed with schizophrenia than those who had not, and the risk of this diagnosis went up with the frequency of cannabis use. The study was replicated several times, and several of the replicated longitudinal studies all had the same evidence. Cannabis use at a higher frequency also raises the risk of developing a psychotic disorder or just having psychotic symptoms in general. Finders of the evidence argue if weed has a correlation or causation, but it has been determined that weed has a contributory causal role of psychosis. Many people with schizophrenia use weed to self medicate their symptoms, but there's reasonable evidence that suggests people with psychosis who are regular cannabis users have more positive symptoms, more frequent relapses, and require more hospitalization. Now, the bigger challenge is finding ways to persuade individuals with schizophrenia to stop doing things or limit the use of things like weed.